Good afternoon, Rockwood South staff. Welcome to the second quarter and a Friday. That means you know what time it is. It's time for another blast. All right, I'm gonna get straight into our learning focus today. We saw a ton of student-centered learning occurring within our classrooms this week, and I want to highlight some of those classes for you right now. One of those being Miss Barnes' social studies class. Students were engaging in a gallery walk style activity that she called graffiti, where students were having to work together to quickly write down as many things as they could think of. I believe these kids here were writing about the Canadian government. I think it was the Canadian government, the United States government, the Mexican government, and various branches of government. So they had a specific period of time where they wrote as much as they could about what they remembered or could recall about those governments. They also needed to look at each poster to make sure that they were contributing new ideas to the poster. After all students had gotten to every piece of those posters, she had them go back to their seats, and then she had them look at all of the posters to engage in processing questions, where then she used some random selection to call on some of those students after they had processed and had an opportunity to speak with the group. It was a great job, and all of the kids loved that graffiti activity. Then I want to move into Miss Veneman's class. Miss Veneman has that top picture there. She had her students engaged in categorizing pictures of the Holocaust. I want to tell you 100% of her students were engaged in that lesson. They were debating about what those categories should look like, where pictures should fit. They were explaining to other students their reasoning for their categorization. It was just really masterfully done. So excellent job, Ms. Vetterman. And then I want to highlight Dr. McGee's social studies class below that, where you can see that students are working together. But what you may not know is that students are developing a skit to demonstrate their understanding of Hammurabi's code. And so all students had a different code that they were having to use their notes to create a skit to then demonstrate. Pretty cool idea. All right, so let's move into our next highlight, and this is Mr. Kennedy's classroom. Now, as much as I would love to tell you about the amazing things I saw in that classroom, I thought it would be better if you could hear it straight from him. Let's take a listen. All right, I get to have a conversation with Mr. Kennedy today because Mr. Kennedy had an amazing lesson in his classroom on Monday. And the key there is that we had no Canvas. We didn't have most of our systems that you would utilize. It's almost like when I think about your lesson, I think of like no Canvas, no problem, because that's exactly what it was like. So, talk us through that review lesson that day with your goal and then how you structured that lesson.
So we had a test coming up on Wednesday this week.
Mm-hmm.
So the intention Monday was for students to review the concepts for the test.
Mm-hmm.
They had a study guide. It had about 25 questions on the study guide. And I don't want students working continuously on 25 questions. It's going to take a lot of time, just them at their table. So
Mm-hmm.
I divided up the questions and said, let's complete about the first 5.
Mm-hmm.
Then we reviewed those with students' participation and conversation with me. They would talk to each other, collaborating about their answers. And then I wanted them to get up and move around. So we went to the vertical boards a couple times during that class. We had it was about ratios and rates. So one of the concepts is students looking at 2 rates and determining which one's the better buy in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So they randomly go to boards. Sometimes we had just changed to a new seating chart in my class. So when we changed to a new seating chart, I want students get to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I had them working with students at their table since they're getting to know each other, and they may not have known each other before in the class. So they work on at the boards, collaborating. One student usually writes, both students talk, and then if another student has a different strategy, then they'll take the marker and write at the
Mm-hmm.
board. Um, I walk around listening for are they actually collaborating? Is there any clarification I can provide without giving away the answer or the strategy?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to ask them any questions to like move them forward in the strategy? Um, and they worked on that. Then they went back to tables, worked on more of their study guide,
Mm-hmm.
and then went back to the boards again. We worked on ratio tables.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I'm looking at in the ratio table, there are a lot of different ways students can move between values in the table.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's valuable then to have the follow-up conversation with students. What did you notice as a class that's similar or different between these tables? And students got to share with the groups in whole class what they shared that was similar and different. So they noticed things like, oh, some groups divided to go between the different columns, some groups multiplied.
Mm-hmm.
They shared other similarities. Um, after the,
Can I just add something there? I That was really cool to see because kids were at the vertical boards. They were doing that. They were answering the prompt that you had, and they were 100% engaged in that. I mean, I saw it. You're walking around. You're asking these follow up questions to help them, think more deeply about the problem. After they were finished, they immediately knew to go back to their seats and to continue working on their study guide. Once all kids were back to their seats, you used an attention, you flipped the lights, which kids knew that your flip of the lights meant they were to switch gears, that you were calling for their attention. And then you had them look at all of the boards and what do you notice? So they had something else they could be doing while they waited for the last remaining groups to finish on those vertical boards. And then once you had them take a look at all of these boards and you had them comparing it and thinking about it and answering questions about it, there were some kids that even went, when they looked at the other boards, went back up to their board. I don't know if you saw that or not, but they went back up to their board and it was like, oh, that's right, we need to do it. And they went up and they wanted to immediately correct it. So they're looking in the room for feedback as well. Mm-hmm. That was awesome. And it was just so well structured. And so then after that part, they went back to doing their review for a short time. And then I'll let you continue.
And I did have the students because they do finish the questions at varying rates. So I always want them to work on items productively next. So yeah, we had some students go back, work on their study guide still with their group. They can collaborate there if they have questions or just want to compare answers or strategies.
Yeah.
Other groups still working at the board. And then yeah, great for them to look at other boards and see what they notice and see if they need to adjust their thinking on their board at that point, even though they already talked to another student and collaborated on that board. The next activity we moved to was a matching activity where I have cards where probably on this activity we had rates and we had unit rates. And on one card I might have a rate and I might have its matching unit rate on another card. And if I have 20 students, then I have 10 sets of those cards at a table. They all walk over and get their own card. And then I think the directions were, if you have a rate card, go ahead and change it to a unit rate. I have these small marker boards at my room where they often write on their marker board before they get up and start walking around trying to find their matching card. That way they're thinking about what they can on their card first. If they had a unit rate, they don't have a rate they could change that into because there are infinite rates they could change that to. So their role then, I tried to explain to students, was if you have a unit rate, when somebody approaches you and they think they have a matching rate for your unit rate, you need to verify that and give them feedback on whether you agree that their rate matches the unit rate.
Got it.
So both students in that conversation have a responsibility, one before walking around, the other as somebody approaches them when walking around.
Right. What do you think's the benefit to
that? They both have equal participation in that. They both are giving each other feedback also. And
Absolutely.
it's self-checking
Uh-huh.
through that conversation for both of them also.
It is. And the benefit of they're working with new partners to learn more within the room.
Yeah.
And they're moving. You had kids up several times, in that small segment of time that I was in your class, moving throughout the room. I mean, they just, again, the management of the time, the way you chunked the activity to make sure that kids were engaged at all times. Kids knew they had enough time to work through any given problem at those boards because there was something else that kids were going to return and do while others waited for them to finish. Even the flipping of the lights, like that was such a great attention getter that kids, they stopped instantly what they were doing and responded to you. So it's very clear that you've been doing this consistently just by the way that they responded.
Thank you.
So anybody who is, because what you did with those two activities caused the whole room to be able to learn from each other. I mean, it really did. So anyone who is considering using vertical whiteboards or a structure like that for the first time, any advice you would give them?
Think about like what the expectations are and communicate those to students before they go to the boards. What's each student's role? Do you want one student writing? Is it okay if both students have a marker and write? I try to tell students, usually I prefer to have one student write and both students can talk about strategy, one student's writing. If they end up writing one strategy and the other student maybe is verbally explaining something and the other student's finding it somewhat challenging to write what they're explaining, then the other student can take the marker and write. But that way, one student's writing, they're both having conversation, they're both listening to each other, and they're not each writing their own work at the same time and not listening to each other.
That's key.
I try to think about where within the problem I'm giving students do I expect there to be an issue, whether it's reading the question, maybe address that before they go to the boards, go through expectations before students get up and start going to the boards. So those are just some of the things that I think about.
That's excellent. That's excellent advice. All right. Well, I hope people come to you and follow up for more information. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Dr. Birkenmeyer.
Excellent job, Mr. Kennedy. And there's some shots of his kids in action. You can see kiddos working at the vertical whiteboards. You can also see kiddos engaging in what one might call that swap meet activity. So awesome job. Please reach out to Mr. Kennedy if you have further questions on how to do this in your class. Now I want to jump into our student advisory leaders. We have met with our 8th grade student advisory leaders, our 7th grade student advisory leaders, and our 6th grade student advisory leaders. Our 6th grade student advisory leaders are the only ones who have yet to present to their advisory classes. That will happen on Monday. 8th and 7th should have presented, and the information they were presenting was on our current DNF data. As you can see, as a school, we have really dropped this year, which is fantastic. I love that we are working right alongside of our students to support them in mastering the skills needed for their learning success, both in your content area, but in others as well, and as they continue their learning and their growth. So I want to share with you that our student leaders were able to once again give us feedback. They then gained feedback as they went into their advisory classes from the other students. We really look forward to sharing that information with you because the information we're gathering from our students, our leadership team really looked closely at that to determine how we can then best support our students as we hear their voices and their needs. It's been really enjoyable to work alongside this group of leaders. And last but not least, I want to thank Jessica Barnes because she allowed me to be Carmen Sandiego. Her and her her ACLAB students created a Carmen Sandiego game in which they hosted various locations all up around the building. There were many students who participated. They used their geography skills to find Carmen Sandiego, and these 4 students were our winners. And so it was fun to go with Miss Barnes and her ACLAB class to present these certificates and to wear the Carmen Sandiego costume. Thank you so much, Miss Barnes. Whew. All right, team. Thank you again for all of your hard work this week. I know it's been a long week for you with conferences. Those are some really long days, late nights. So thank you for your work. Please make sure that you have your grades updated and that you have your A and Bs in the system before you leave today. But hopefully you'll be watching this video after that and already have your grades in and ready to go. Otherwise, get some rest this weekend, and I look forward to seeing you all on Monday. Take care.